This article is what I think it can be described fairly as the definitive case against Hope Not Hate, and their long history of malfeasance coming from their origins as just a malevolent communist activist group. I've never heard of the Restorationist, nor am I familiar with Alex Coppen and Michael Reiners, but they have done a superb job here, not only cataloguing the relevant information, but also couching it in the correct frame from a, well, honestly, just patriotic English perspective. And so I'm quite impressed, and I think what we'll do is go through it. I'll leave a link in the description if you'd like to read through it in your own time, but it is quite remarkable. Now, they front load this with the philosophical grounding in which they're operating, which is fine, and then they move on to the problem that actually British law has instantiated in it, which is Boris Johnson's Covert Human Intelligence Sources Criminal Conduct Act of 2021, which allows intelligence officers and their informants to murder, torture, bug, propagandize, and engage in injustice if it's all in the interest of justice and the greater good. Now, that, you might think, hang on, that does sound a lot like Hope Not Hate, doesn't it? And this is precisely the point. So, they explain that the Hope Not Hate as an organisation has years of documented misconduct, including harassment, unlawful data gathering, potential criminal activity, and all of this the CPS has failed to act upon. And the article questions whether the CPS's inaction is due to oversight, political alignment, or something more troubling, a structural reluctance to investigate organisations that present themselves as anti-extremist while operating outside of the law. And, I mean, I would argue that it's because the Crown Prosecution Service, which is currently headed by a communist, in a government headed by an ex-communist, would definitely find themselves as, I don't know, fellow travellers at worst, and deeply sympathetic co-ideologues at best with Hope Not Hate. So what incentive have they got to investigate? So anyway, they argue that the case against Hope Not Hate is more than a case of regulatory failure. It raises fundamental questions about the political neutrality of public prosecutors and the future of the rule of law in Britain. Yes. And this is entirely the problem with the two-tier system we're in. People on the left can get away with murder. People on the right can't. Now, you might say, well, what about Palestine Action? It's like, yeah, that's interesting, isn't it? Because Palestine Action have gone outside of the current agreed orthodoxy on the left and said, actually, we don't like Israel a lot, to the point where, honestly, it does start to look like anti-Semitism. So you can see that the liberal centre is finding itself beset on both sides. And Hope Not Hate, I think, are probably quite clever on this, because they tend not to go after Israel all that much, because they're not stupid. Anyway, it begins with a history of how Hope Not Hate came to be, and as you can see, it begins with a chap called Jerry Gable, who worked for the Daily Worker newspaper, a communist newspaper, that has become the Morning Star, a communist newspaper, named after Lucifer, incidentally. Trade union organiser, was a political candidate for the Communist Party of Great Britain, and became an intelligence officer for a group of vigilante thugs in London, saying that he wanted to take revenge on Nazis. So, okay, the war is over. In 1964, he and two accomplices broke into David Irving's flat and did various other things. And he entered into this sort of world of people who are still fighting World War II, right? So he ended up working for a newspaper called Searchlight, which itself is just a communist, like basically a harassment publication, or was. He worked for Panorama, getting several £100,000 in libel fees for the BBC, and Private Eye magazine was forced to pay out for libel when they first falsely published information that he had given them. And during the 1990s, he made up something called Combat 18, because nobody can really see what Combat 18 actually is. But we are assured that Combat 18 is a scary thing out there. But anyway, as the article reports, after they subsequently libelled 3 libertarian writers, Searchlight were collectively sued and almost bankrupted. And then he goes on to Nick Lowles. Now, Nick Lowles was a freelance journalist, quote-unquote, at World in Action in Panama before he became the co-editor of Searchlight in 1999. In 2002, he tells us, Searchlight began masquerading under the Stop the BNP, adopting Hope Not Hate as their moniker in 2004. And this began as they tell us, the process of splintering the organisation from its dubious past. So there's a kind of rebranding because it seems internal infighting. What happened in the following decade appears to be a bitter power struggle involving Lowell's operation to wrestle control of Searchlight for himself. The Searchlight Information Services became Hope Not Hate, a limited company which is to do communist campaigning, and the Searchlight Educational Trust, the charity, was renamed to Hope Not Hate Charitable Trust. The State of the British Right that Searchlight produced became the State of Hate Report. So you can see that this is a direct successor to it, run by the same people for the same reasons, just under different branding. Freedom of Information Act requests have revealed that they were paid by the Home Office, paid by the London Assembly, as well as employed by the Department of Communities and Local Government. The Economist, so they're being funded by the state, or they have been funded by the state. The Economist accused them of massively exaggerating the celebration of an MP's murder by the political enemies. The Spectator called their gangster tactics a form of racketeering coercion. The Critic called them the left's sponsored attack dog. Novara Media accused them of cherry-picking their opponents. And Guido Fawkes published recordings which appear to implicate the group in partisan violation of electoral law. What a surprise. In 2018, they were successfully sued for libelling a bookshop owner. In 2021, they were accused of libelling their own award winner. In 2023, the Shawcross Review of the Home Office's Prevent programme accused them of falsely conflating legitimate disagreement with extremism. In 2024, Lowell's was forced to publicly apologise for circulating a hoax list of protesters and falsely claiming extremists were engaging in acid attacks. And in 2025, he was accused again of circulating false claims of immediate infanticide in Gaza. And there are a few other false claims that Nick Lowell's has made, which are actually listed in the article. But Lowell's explains why literally saying, right-wing extremists are engaging in acid attacks is justified. Circulating false lists is justified. He says, quote, "Yes, the list was a hoax, but look at the front pages of today's papers. An anti-racist message is being transmitted to millions of homes this morning." So there we go. The ends justify the means. I'm allowed to lie and hurt people and be as dishonest and unlawful as it is necessary to be to advance the cause of communism. Now, I would argue that this is actually not doing a very good job of advancing the cause of communism. Actually, I would suggest that when people see Hope Not Hate acting, they realise, all right, radical progressivism has this dark and potentially violent element in it that is completely immune to ethical concerns, and they will do terrible things. And so why would I think there's any particular limit to the terrible things that they would do? And if this is just normal and accepted by the communists on the left, then why would I not assume that they're all kind of cut from the same cloth? Because, I mean, if there's one thing that I do on the right, and every other right-winger I know, it's we are completely against violence. We are invested in the electoral system, the democratic system. We are invested in the rule of law. I always tell people, we are going to form parties. We are going to vote for parties. We are going to persuade people and change people's minds. Do not do anything stupid, because being stupid is not the path to victory. And I think Hope Not Hate are showing us this. So anyway, they carry on explaining how this is an inheritance from the German communists of the 1960s and 70s. Completely correct, by the way. I've studied all of this in depth. In the past, I've done book clubs on Herbert Marcuse, in fact, on lotuseast.com. You can go and watch them if you are interested in finding out the details. And they have adopted what he calls the American Super PAC model. So, as Nick Timothy challenged in October 2024, you can see that they have their narrative, right? They'll say, Hope Not Hate Limited is not a charity, therefore it is not subject to the restrictions on political activity that apply to charities, and does not come under the Charity Commission's jurisdiction. Hope Not Hate Charitable Trust is a charity, and therefore does come under the Charity Commission's jurisdiction, and cannot engage in partisan political activity. The Charity Commission does not have an open regulatory case on Hope Not Hate Charitable Trust. Now, this is not exactly terribly persuasive, is it? Alright, so you've got Hope Not Hate Limited, which is a private company, and you've got the Hope Not Hate Charitable Trust, which is a charity, and what do we think the border between those things looks like? I mean, if you were being very charitable, you'd suggest it's probably a bit permeable, But obviously, it's going to be run by the same people who are directly in cahoots with one another. So there's going to be no border at all. It's clearly a way of just getting around the law. So they're going to take money from the Charitable Trust, and I would assume that what they do, in fact, what they show in this article, what they do is funnel it into the limited company. So that's not really on, and the CPS really should, and the Charity Commission absolutely should be taking action on this, right? Because, I mean, it really beggars belief to think that, that this is going to be something they're on the up and up about, right? Anyway, as you can see, the Charitable Trust takes large amounts of money from various trusts, the Barrow Cadbury Trust, the Paul Hamlin Foundation, the Joseph Rowntree Charitable Trust, blah, blah, blah. And they take tens of thousands, well, you take totals into hundreds of thousands of pounds in donations. Google provided them a significant donation in 2022, and various others. But the thing is, Hope Not Hate's ability to draw in beneficiaries is waning. Its financial position has deteriorated significantly. So basically, they only raised $164,000 in funding during 2023, but expended far more. So they're probably eating into any savings they have. But as you can see, they made a £650,000 grant to Hope Not Hate Limited, an operational partner, as well as other monies. So they are definitely moving money, or it's, as far as this report indicates, they're moving money from the charity to Hope Not Hate. So, again, at best it's a fig leaf to say there's a distinction between these two, is it not? I mean, that's what this reporting would insinuate. In fact, they just openly state this slightly further on. Hope Not Hate Limited, the political arm, received £650,000 in grants from Hope Not Hate Charitable Trust in 2023 with no discernible independent revenue stream. So this is a case of, here's our charity, we're not taxed on this, this is a tax write-off for you guys, I assume. I think that's how it works in the UK. So you can give us a load of money, and then we will just funnel that straight into the limited company that will be the political campaigning arm that will go out and do bad things to people. It will go out and harass people, stalk people, libel people, it'll do terrible things that are just not acceptable. And so it seems that the limited company is just entirely dependent on the funding it receives from the charity, and they say its survival is wholly dependent on charitable funding. There is no meaningful separation in substance, only in form. And even that is, again, merely a fig leaf. And this, of course, is something that we have laws against. And so the CPS, or the Charities Commission, could look into this, and they could take action against this, but for some reason they don't. Very interesting. Anyway, they notice that this is basically a way of kind of putting a marker light on a target, right? They say, oh, look at this bad person, look at this bad person, look at this bad person. And what they're doing, I mean, it is kind of like a game of it in school. But what they're doing is trying to make it so there are targets that the mainstream, the platform, the politicians, whoever, can go after. So they're trying to act as literally putting up like searchlights on someone to be victimized. Now, it looks like that era has passed us by, thankfully, because it was just awful. And it shouldn't be done either way, by the way, just FYI. I'm actually still a free speech extremist. But this is their just general modus operandi. So one of the things they do is exploit grey areas of organisational law. As you can see, they compile lists of individuals which may involve personal data that they have to make available to the people they're collecting the data on. There are various acts of electoral interference which they have denied, but it is alleged that is against them. Again, I'm not going to go through everything in detail. You can read it in your own time. I have read through it, which is why I've got these highlights on here, things I want to talk about with you. The operating as a movement or front group while engaging in electoral activity without registering as a third-party campaigner may breach several areas of UK law. Again, if the authorities were interested in actually doing the right thing and actually making sure that the system was working as intended, Hope Not Hate would be investigated and any malfeasance would not be allowed to stand. But of course, they're not, for political reasons, because we live in a two-tier system that is essentially run by communists, and these people are their attack dogs, and they know it. You've got them carefully skirting the criminal line, which, again, lots of stuff in here, but there's also them stalking and harassing, which they did to Morgoth during their expose of him. Apparently, they repetitively harassed neighbours and offered to bribe them for information, which, of course, bribery, not acceptable in England either. This happened to Dr. Charles Cornish Dale, otherwise known as Roaring Nationalist, when he was being stalked by a US journalist. There is no actual category of person of legal recognised authority called journalist in the UK, by the way. So anyone can call themselves a journalist, actually. So when they say Tommy Robinson's not a journalist, it's like, all you have to do is say you're a journalist. That's what it takes to become a journalist. Maybe doing some actual journalism also is a way of people being able to describe you as a journalist. Anyway, you've also got coercive control and protection rackets. Now, English law, as they point out, does not recognise racketeering as a statutory offence, but the conduct involved in racketeering is what is recognised, such as they tell us: coordinated threats, coercion, blackmail, surveillance, and harassment carried out by an organised group. And these are all things that they've been accused of as well. For example, Douglas Murray, in 2024, said that Hope Not Hate had written a particular report and threatened to put him in it. When he lawyered up, Hope Not Hate explained that if I removed the piece criticising it, it might consider removing my name from its latest hit list. In other words, the group is not just silly but sinister. And that's interesting, isn't it? Because Douglas Murray hasn't appeared, to my knowledge, in a Hope Not Hate hit list. The thing is, I actually think that not taking them seriously is actually the best tactic, and saying, do whatever you want, I don't care. We are not going to change just because of what a bunch of communists on the internet say. A bunch of not very trustworthy and gentlemanly communists on the internet either. I don't think it would have affected Douglas Murray at all to have featured in one of these. And they can shove it. We'll have the thoughts that we want to have. Thank you very much. There's also the point that, of course, they only ever go after soft targets because they're cowards. And they carry on to explain who the key people involved in Hope Not Hate are. But the thing is, these aren't terribly secret. You can find these out fairly easily. But it's good to have a comprehensive list, comprehensive documentation of it. And so they finish by saying, look, of course they're allowed to publish critiques or whatever it is they want, and like everyone else should do. But I particularly like this end paragraph, right? At the end of the conversation, the Englishman is reasonable. England is a country of eccentric, often puritanical, inventive villagers with controversial opinions mediated by quiet manners. The activity of Lowell and Co. are invasive, alien, and foreign to us. We do not recognise it as English. And that's because it's not. These are tactics that were invented in Germany and France and have been imported over here wholesale by a bunch of malevolent communists who are genuinely trying to impose a foreign creed on the country. And they want to hurt anyone who is, frankly, normal and wants to do things the traditional Old English way. We are happy for people to have extreme opinions. You can have any extreme opinions. And in fact, they say this at the end, and I totally agree with this. We do like our extreme opinions, but we don't tend to vote for them. And you can see that by the fact that we're still stuck in the centrist paradigm, even as it's collapsing. The people we've shoved into the parliament can't do anything with it. And even then we're like, look, you're just going to have to figure it out because we're not voting for extremists, actually. But then things that were considered extreme by the old paradigm are actually, if you think about it, mostly quite normal. And I think the recalibration of what is normal is coming about. But I think the fundamental point is that, like, people don't want this kind of malevolent, ill-intentioned hostility poisoning public life. Like, that's the problem with Hope Not Hate, is they genuinely damage the social fabric of the country. And it's got to the point now where people are just ignoring them or laughing at them. And that's basically the best thing to do. Just so it's understood that on the sympathetic side of Hope Not Hate, it's understood by the powers that be that they can't act on this. It is not sufficient for Hope Not Hate to not like you for them to be able to act on you.